Hello, I'm here to talk about unleashing your inner power with Dr. Anand. Today's topic is communication. That is very special. Human beings are human beings because of communication. Well, you know, ants communicate, bees dance to tell the other bees where the honey is, elephants communicate. If you look at different pictures, you'll find elephants actually go to burial grounds where other elephants have died. That's how clever they are. Whales communicate, monkeys communicate, crows communicate, but nothing like human beings. You know, our brain is only 1.5 kilos in weight. Our body maybe say 75 kilos. And yet, 20% of the sugar in your body is used in the brain, disproportionately. The brain is where the thinking happens, where the communication starts. So we communicate in many ways. You can communicate by talking. You can communicate by nodding your head. You can communicate by saying, So there are many ways that humans communicate, but you can also communicate by writing. Now, caveman started writing, and we are copying it even today by writing, by typing, by dictating into machines that type for you, and so on. Professor Mehrabian of New York showed that for 100% communication, you have to look at 3 different levels. One is pure text. So when you write a text, when you do an email, when it's a written down thing, when it's a book, it's only to do with 7%. So out of the 100%, you only communicate 7%. Remember, we're all texting each other all the time, but people take it amiss. Now we are adding emoticons because now the visual element is coming. So when you do a telephone call, you add another 38%. Remember, 7% is text, 38% is tone, but 55% is facial expressions. So if you ask me a question, where were you yesterday? And I look to the left generally, that goes to the past. I'm telling you the truth. But if you ask me a question, Doctor, where were you yesterday? And I look to the future, I'm going to tell you a lie. These things are studied in neuro-linguistic programming. So remember also that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But imagine a video, which I'm doing with you, it's 25, 30, 60 frames per second. And there is sound and there is movement that is much more immersive. So when you talk on Facebook with someone, with your family far away, genuine communication takes place. Even radio stations in Britain, and I'm sure in our part of the world, are also doing YouTube at the same time, besides the sound. So for full communication, you need a face-to-face. And I'll tell you something even more that I've discovered. When you're within 10 feet of another human being, your heart-to-heart resonances happen. I was telling you the other day, when the baby is in mother's tummy, he and the mother hearts resonate. So they beat at a frequency that are easily connectable. So if she's 70 beats a minute, it'll be 140 and so on, not 142. So this is called resonance, communication. Another thing I'd like to say, an interview is an interview. Most people think, I'm the interviewer, he's the fellow I'm interviewing, I'll talk to him. No, then you'll get the wrong end of the stick. Because say if I'm employing you as an employer, I want to know your side. Do you fit? And I personally have gone to interviews all my life and stood my ground. I have never gone in as, oh, I'm poor, I'm small, and you're the boss. Nothing like that. Because one day, I want to rise. So I've gone to many interviews and just been truthful. And they can make out that this guy is telling the truth. But when you look down and are shifty, people make out that you're lying and cheating. So that's the general idea about communication. Let's look at the growth of communication. Initially, people would grunt, the caveman would go, and over time these sounds have come and language developed in all parts of the world, whether it was India and Sanskrit, or the West and Latin, or Arabic, these ancient languages, Hebrew, they came and language has improved. That's one aspect. Another aspect was writing on the walls. There are caveman writings which are thousands of years old. Then people started writing on paper, papyrus from Egypt, In India, they used to write on palm leaves. It's called Tamrapatra, then on copper. And then the printing press came, and that revolutionized everything. And initially, the printing press had those lead things, and now it's all on computers. So it's getting faster and faster. Books are now on the internet and so on. But with the advent of modern communication and advent of you and me and everyone being communicators, a lot of unprofessional behavior has set in. I'm not saying at all that YouTube is bad or Facebook is bad or any of these things are bad, Instagram. But the desire to please people has become so high that people will do anything for numbers, like tell lies, blatant lies, take fake pictures. And now, in the last 2-3 years, with advent of artificial intelligence, it's very hard to tell the truth from the fake. Often the fake looks real. So I can make my speech and change the voice to Ronald Reagan's. And I can make Ronald Reagan's face say anything. But that's not communication, that's telling lies. The disadvantage of that is the world becomes a very much more unstable place because you don't know whether you're going or coming, as they say in English. And you just don't know where danger is. And there's, of course, the other thing that is so prevalent on the internet, pornography. And government is not controlling it. That's also communication, but sadly a bad one. The other aspect of communication, which is, I feel, negative, is we are seeing everything live on the spot. People have been killing people for a long time, but I don't need to sit and enjoy it or get used to it. I should know that something is happening. Someone is getting beheaded in one part of the world. Do I need to see it and dehumanize myself? No. So I'll tell you, I, for one, when I see something violent or sexual, I just can't stand it because I don't want to hurt myself. I want to remain young, happy, innocent, creative. And I recommend the same thing to you. So whenever you see something awful, bad, either complain to YouTube and say this is wrong. The other side of communication is everything has become an algorithm. There's no human beings. I, for instance, did a program against pornography with my own blood sister and 2 other ladies against it. And yet, YouTube channel blocked me. I rang and said, look, I'm working against it. So they said, when you use the word pornography, use the word P. In a way, that's gagging me. Why can't I talk against something that is, I believe, bad for humanity and for everyone and for family members and everything? But somehow algorithms, just to save money. A real human being can think in a more broad way. And I'm sure artificial intelligence could take over one day. But let me tell you, artificial intelligence is very skewed to the left. They decide what is allowed and what is not, because the algorithms are not written by common people, normal human beings, loving human beings, family type people like you and me. It's written by computer nerds, and they are deciding. It is a little bit like a doctor deciding when can the person live, when can he die. That's something for society, that's something for ethics. So when you give someone too much power, it gets abused. You know the famous dictum, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I'm quite concerned that these huge tech companies, such as Google, such as YouTube, such as Instagram, such as X, otherwise Twitter, they control our minds. And I'm totally against it because every human has something fresh to tell you. A real human being is full of love, warmth, happiness. But these tech companies, they make money. And I'll give you an example of bad communication, not just about false. I have a friend in Lahore, and he went and told someone, I think your daughter is having an affair. This is absolutely true. And he said, what do you mean? She's getting, I have seen, adverts for babies, Pampers and so on, because somewhere she's been researching it. And I think that's wrong because everyone's entitled to their privacy. I'm bombarded. If I just like one product, I'm bombarded. And you almost have to protect yourself from this commercial communication, unwanted communication, all the emails we get, all the spam we get. You know the word spam. Spam means luncheon meat, means very poor quality meat sold in millions. So when I sent out an advert to everyone I know, that's called spam. When I send it to people who I know, who will like it or dislike it, I have a comment, that is real. So I'll tell you something more on Facebook. I have been on Facebook from a very long time. I've been on YouTube for a very long time. And still occasionally I get banned because I have to be careful what I say. That's wrong. Freedom of speech, for instance, means true communication. Freedom of speech means I have a freedom to come right up to your nose but not touch your nose. I can say things that might hurt you but not willfully do it to hurt you. Many things I say people don't like, but they know that is my truth. And you can speak your truth. And then we can disagree or agree without being disagreeable. So in a world where there's growth, where there's diversity, where there's plurality, I like the word plurality much more than diversity. Diversity is a tick box. Oh, we got so many white people, let's put a brown person, box is ticked. No, plurality means I don't even bother to look at what color you are. I want the best pilot for my plane. I want the best surgeon to do me, and so on. So the system should not take over human beings. Human beings are, again, about communication and being good to each other. Now, let me tell you that I'm not just making a speech. And I know it's a one-way communication. You cannot talk to me just now. But you can always write to me on my email and I will personally reply. Actually, I'll also ask you for topics of interest, things that you want explored, and I'll happily do something on a topic of your interest. So it is about communication, though at the minute it's from me to you. I want something from you to me. I come from South Asia and my English was pretty okay because I went to English medium school. So that wasn't the problem. But the way I used English, the pronunciation, it's a bit like clothes, you know. You can have ill-fitting clothes and you can talk in English, but in a very poor way, with poor pronunciation, with poor diction. So I actually went to a speaking club. I went in Whitley Bay here, and ultimately after 2 years, I became the secretary of how to speak, how to use body language, how to use pauses, how not to say as you know, however, you know, those repetitive mistakes we make during speech. So all that polishes you up. And when I joined a political party where most people are very highly educated, then it has come to use because they trust me, because I can communicate. Imagine going to a different country, say I go to China, and I learn a little bit of Chinese, but I don't know how the system works, but I can only learn by communication with my neighbor, with the fellow across the road, with the professor, with the car mechanic. And through them we learn. So we have to be very careful in a new country to be constantly learning. And you can only learn if you improve the way you talk, the way you behave. And communication is a complete package. It's not just the words, it's not just the telephone, it's not just the writing. It is how you dress, how you interact with people. And as I was saying in the beginning, communication is all for human beings. We don't have big nails like a tiger. We don't have a furry coat like the polar bear. We can't fly like an eagle. But we can do all things because we have a brain. But my brain and your brain only connect through communication, whether written or verbal or body language or whatever means we use. If you're on the telephone, for instance, how many of you can leave a message on the phone without going, because we feel embarrassed we are talking to a machine. But pretend you're talking to a real person. When you're on the phone, you create an image. When I'm talking to somebody, I think of what they look like. And now on the phone, even the picture comes up. And talk real. Talk with relaxation. Talk with genuineness, because they can all make out what a lie is. So I would love to improve communication. And one little tip I'll give you, having been on Facebook, in the initial times I used to have arguments with people. Now, there's many ways of communicating. Not saying anything is a very powerful communication. It's called the power of no. If somebody writes a bad comment and you don't say anything, over time people will say, he's not saying anything, why are you being nasty to him? And that's what's happening to me now. So when someone makes a joke about me, anything you do in public life, somebody will have a problem. Out of 100 people, 50 will say lovely, 40 will keep quiet, 10% will say something negative, just to test you. And just keeping quiet, which is not my normal nature, but I've learned over 4 years as a politician that just keeping my mouth shut is pretty good. And then people stand up and say, why are you being nasty to him? He said nothing to you. And that really feels warm. So do not engage. Do not use rude 4-letter words. Always be the gentleman. Always be the polite person and people will respect you. As I say, communication is just like your clothes. If you wear smart clothes, well ironed, clean, same with language. South Asian people have a difficulty with certain sounds like pa. Here we say Peter. In India we say Peter. And all these kind of things should be looked into. I would lovingly want to do things. If you're too embarrassed or too poor, YouTube. YouTube has channel after channel about improving our English. I've spoken English for 73 years. I'm 77 to 73 years. I still have a book called Fowler's Modern English Usage because communication is so important. So let me tell you how communication improvement will help your professional life. In my case, I came as a doctor in the hospital, and within 6 months you established a bond, so the specialist would give you a reference, so you go to the next job, and so on. And ultimately it worked for me. I used to type my letters in 1982, and I used to get jobs, though it was difficult. I'm from the subcontinent, but I got the best job that was in the best area of Newcastle, only because of my communication skills. And here I'm talking to you as a motivational speaker for your benefit. At least the mistakes I made, you shouldn't have to make. And I could easily be sitting and playing golf and just going to weddings and getting fat and dying one day. But I don't believe in that. I believe in sharing anything good I have to give. Anything wrong, forget it, ignore me. But anything good I have is yours. It's not like a wealth that I'll keep it to myself. And I believe the more you share goodness, the more it grows. I truly, truly believe that. So let's communicate, all of us, in a good way by supporting one another, by being interactive, not necessarily reactive, interactive, peacefully, calmly. There's a book I have called Non-Violent Communication. I actually picked it up in Lahore. And I look at pages of the book to look at where I can say the same thing in a nicer way. In Sanskrit, there's a saying, Satyam Briyat Priyam Briyat, which means speak the truth, but sweetly. I've tried very hard and partially succeeded in speaking sweetly. I always speak the truth. One of my best friends, he said, you got a very good point and you have a very bad point. I said, tell me. He said, your very good point is you speak the truth and the very bad point is you speak the truth. What he meant was, there are places where keeping quiet is the better option. So sometimes communication is about saying nothing. And I hope you have had some advantage from this. Keep watching this series. It's for you, it's for your benefit, so that you can grow personally, socially, in your family, in your marriage, with your employer, in the part of the world you live in the country and in the world. Because humans are only about communication. That is the way we humans have grown. As I remind you that though the brain is a very small part of our body, it uses 1/5 of all the sugar. It's a high utilitarian use of the brain because humans are meant to communicate. Humans are meant to be group people, because if you're looking after each other, reaching out to each other, you will see the huge benefit to yourself, to your family, to your country.